Coming up, Marco throws his M2 MacBook Air in the bin, complains about the notch again, takes some selfies, complains about the notch a little more, does a sound test, and much more. So make sure you sit back and relax because you're watching Everything Tech with Marco. Well, hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out Apple's M2 MacBook Air. We're also going to touch briefly on the M1 MacBook Air as well, just so we can get a bit of a comparison between the two to see if there's any new differences between the two. Now, Apple's M1 MacBook Air looks something like this. It has Apple's M1 chip in it. It's pretty good. It's about 12 times faster than a normal Intel-based laptop, and it has probably been one of my favorite laptops Apple's ever released. Now, not that long ago, about 10 months ago, Apple released the M2 MacBook Air, and they didn't just release it in one size, they released it in two. I only have the 13-inch one. Well, it's actually not 13 inches, it's actually 13.6 inches, but you get the idea. And it looks something like this. It has been completely redesigned, and I absolutely love the new design, except for one thing I can't stand, and you're going to find out a little bit later in the video. In this video, we're going to be doing a brief overview of the M2 MacBook Air. I'm also going to share 5 reasons why I think you should buy it, and 5 reasons why I think you should just get it and literally throw it in the bin.
I hate this stupid thing. I'll put it in the bin.
Now, Apple's M1 MacBook Air, it's starting to get a little bit out of date. The borders on it, around the screen, they're massive, they're thick, they're chunky, they need to go. Apple's achieved that with the M2 MacBook Air, kind of, we'll get to that. But overall, the M1 MacBook Air is still a great laptop. It comes in 3 colours, space grey, gold and silver. You can only get it in 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gig of storage. Now, let's talk about price of the M1 MacBook Air. The M1 MacBook Air starts at $1,500. You'll get all that amazing stuff for $1,500. It's great value for money. And you know what, it's going to stand the test of time as well, especially with that M1 chip. Now let's talk about the M1 MacBook Air's older brother or sister, depending on what gender you want to call this. It starts at $1,800. Now that is 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gig of storage, and that's it. You do get a new charger. It is the braided MagSafe cable. I love MagSafe, it is so much better than USB-C. You only get that on the M1 MacBook Air, unfortunately, but look, it is a much older design. The chassis of the M1 MacBook Air is much older, so obviously they couldn't incorporate that into that. Alright, M2 MacBook Air. So it comes with 2 sizes, 13.6 inches. That one starts at $1,800. You've got 15.3 inches, that one starts at $2,200. Now that is a $400 price difference there. So if you really want those extra inches, you do need to make sure that you're also prepared to pay the extra $400 for the 15.3 inch model. Now, majority of people will just buy the 13.6 inch model. It comes with 18-hour battery life. That's perfect. That's all you need realistically. It's all-day battery life. Bring the charger with you. Or do what I do and carry around a battery pack. I carry a battery pack with me if you haven't watched my tech bag unboxing. My friends live off that battery pack. I don't even think I've had the opportunity to use it, but it's such a great thing to carry with you just to top up your phone, your AirPods, or even your laptop. Such a handy thing to have. The other big upgrade over the M1 MacBook Air is that you're getting a new display. Now it is the Liquid Retina display. Now this new Liquid Retina display is the exact same on both models from memory, the 13-inch and the 15-inch. It can support up to 1 billion colors, which is a new thing this year. Now this year, normally the MacBook Air screen size is 13 inches, but because I suppose you could kind of say this, the screen on the M2 MacBook Air actually lost weight, so that way the borders around the side have shrunk dramatically. But on the other hand, the chassis itself didn't lose weight. In fact, it actually put on weight. So usually the MacBook Air starts really thick at one end and it's really thin at the other. This year it's the same length the entire way along. So that also means the feet on the bottom have definitely gotten bigger to support that extra weight. Now the other thing on the display that, yes, you probably have noticed, is for some reason the notch has appeared on the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pros. If you're going to pay $1,800, $2,200, or you're going to pay $4,000 for a MacBook Pro, you probably don't want a massive rectangle in the top of the screen. Now let's go back to the iPhone. The reason why the notch was put on the iPhone was to house the iPhone's Face ID sensor. Now that's why the iPhone had it, and that's why it still has it to this day. Over the years the notch has gotten smaller because Apple have been able to compact the Face ID sensor. Now when I first saw the notch when Apple released the M2 MacBook Air, I thought we were going to get Face ID on the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pros. But then when they said that it didn't have Face ID and that they'd actually upgraded the camera, that's another update. So the M1 MacBook Air's got 720p camera, whereas the new M2 MacBook Air's got 180p. It's not that much of a big upgrade. Here's some selfies now just to show you. But like, you kind of get the idea, like, you know, you can use Photo Booth, take some cool photos, you can use it for FaceTime, Zoom, all that kind of boring fun stuff. No one really does it anymore, but it's still there if you want it. But it still isn't a reason for why the notch needs to be there. To be honest, they could have just moved the camera up into the top border, but they haven't done that. Instead, we now have the notch. And it is just very frustrating, and I feel like it really lets down the display. Overall, the display is fantastic to use. Now, the next thing we have to talk about is the design. The design has obviously been upgraded. When you hold the laptop in your hand, the M2 feels so nice to hold. It's smooth, it feels expensive. You'll notice that the feet on the bottom are a different shape. The whole laptop's a different shape. The Apple logo has been enlarged, which is a nice touch. The actual casing of the M1 MacBook Air is quite sharp. I notice on the older model, people will agree with me, the M1 MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, both their casings are quite sharp to hold. A lot of people notice it when they pick it up. When you pick up one of the M2 laptops, whether that be a MacBook Air or Pro, you'll notice how soft the actual casing feels. Not so much the metal, but it's almost like instead of having sharp pointy edges, they've rounded them off. It's almost like they forgot to do that in the manufacturing process, but this year they've done that, and it gives it such better premium feel in the hand. It feels so much better than the older models, and it's such a nice touch. It actually feels like you've spent $1,800 rather than $1,500. You can feel that price difference, which I think is very important. Next thing, let's talk about the keyboard. Now, I will do a quick sound test for you guys so that you can hear what that sounds like. To be honest with you, it is pretty much the same as last year's keyboard. They have changed the shape of a few of the keys, the Touch ID sensors put on weight, and then, you know, below that you have those few keys that are literally just there for looks. You never ever push them. You then go along and you notice that that's just the normal keyboard that's always been there. It's not the butterfly keyboard, it's that newer keyboard that Apple, you know, recently brought out. It's really great. There's plenty of travel on the keys, which is really important. The actual arrow keys themselves have stayed the same size this year. They haven't made them large squares anymore. They've kept them nice and rectangular, which is perfect for playing Tetris. I mean, scrolling through websites. We don't play Tetris. Other than that, the trackpad's basically the same size, and it just feels so much more premium and modern to use. And I think it's well and truly worth the spending the extra money on the M2 MacBook Air. And if you want to get the bigger one with the extra 2 inches, whatever it is, well then yes, you can spend the extra $400 and get that. The only difference between the 13-inch and the 15-inch is that the 15-inch actually gets a few extra speakers. That's a new feature that they all have, which is surround sound. So instead of the speaker blowing sound at you, it actually surrounds you in the sound, which is a fantastic thing. That's another thing you'll notice on the laptop, is that the M1 MacBook Air will actually have cutouts for the speakers, whereas the M2 MacBook Airs don't, which is quite a nice touch. It certainly, though, doesn't affect the sound quality, which is really, really good. Here's a quick sound test now if you were interested. Obviously this is a video, so in real life the actual sound itself will sound much better. The only thing was, the MacBook Airs are always a little bit low on bass. The MacBook Pros will always have a bit more bass. I'm not sure why this is the case. I used to think it was because of the shape of the actual MacBook Air's chassis, but because this year it ate lots of cake and now it's the same length the whole way, I don't actually think that's the case anymore. I just think Apple do it on purpose so that way that there's a difference between them both. Now that brings me to a reason, my first reason why I think you should buy this laptop. Now it's a fantastic laptop, it's definitely an improvement over the M1. Now the M2 processor is only 1.4 times quicker than the M1, so realistically there isn't a massive reason to quickly rush out and upgrade. But there are certainly other features like the surround sound, the new display, the new camera, the nicer chassis, the actual casing itself looks much nicer. So there you go, that's like another 3, 4, 5 reasons why you should buy it. Anyway, now let's move on to a reason why you shouldn't buy it, and I think the notch is the first reason. The notch, why? Just, it didn't need to be there, and I think a lot of people will agree with me. A lot of people say, Marco, it doesn't matter, it's just a notch. It doesn't impact the screen in any way. My thing is, it just doesn't give you an advantage over the old display. If anything, it just makes it look a bit uglier. It's almost like they were cutting away at the display and then they went and had lunch. Then they come back and forgot where they were up to, and then they've started cutting in a different spot, and then they've just realized after they've manufactured the product that they've missed a spot. It's really frustrating that it's still there, but look, we have to live with it. It doesn't look that bad, but it's just annoying. The other thing is, the second reason why I wouldn't buy it. These are my reasons, probably not a very valid reason why I wouldn't buy it, but these are reasons why I wouldn't buy it. The software side of things. Now, when you put an app into full screen, all the time and effort that Apple put in to make the borders around the laptop thinner has gone to waste because they haven't used that space when you put an app into full screen. So that 13.6 inches that they advertise is no longer being used because their border around the side of the laptop gets filled in with black pixels. So it's just a little bit like, what was the point of removing the thicker borders? So the only time you get any advantage of the full screen is when you're on the home screen. Again, that's probably just a software problem that can easily be fixed. I just really wish that Apple could have incorporated the apps around the notch and just into that new display that they've built. I feel like that was a wasted chance there. That brings me on to my third reason, build quality. Now when it comes to Apple, build quality is great, but over time what I'm noticing with this laptop is that the screws on the bottom of the laptop are coming loose. Now it's really annoying when a screw comes loose because your fingers are constantly going to rub up against it. It's sharp and it hurts. The build quality of a MacBook's pretty good. There are just some components of it that don't hold up very well, and this is the screen. The screen, it scratches so easily. The keyboard and trackpad actually indent onto the screen. Again, that's going to affect the value of the laptop when you go to sell it because it's going to have damage on the screen. The other thing is the Apple logo. It scratches up so easily, it's almost like I need a screen protector for the Apple logo. Overall, the actual metal frame is pretty durable. There's just a few things that let it down, like the screws, the screen, and the Apple logo that just make it not feel like a very durable device. Certainly something that Apple can fix. Now, the fourth thing that I can't stand about this M2 MacBook Air is that they've forgotten to write MacBook Air on it. When Apple release a MacBook, they always write their name on it. It'll say MacBook Air, MacBook Pro below the screen. But it's like they forgot to do it this year. It's like the person that writes MacBook Air or sticks it on the bottom of the screen was like sick when they were making these laptops, or like he died or something, and it's just like, well, Apple's just like, oh, we just won't put that on there. So for those people that don't know what laptop they've purchased and they want to buy a screen protector for that laptop, or they want to buy a case for it, with the MacBook Air, you're not going to know what laptop you bought. You will be simply looking at it thinking, I don't know what I bought and I want to buy a case for it. I get those questions quite a lot. People bring me a device and say, I don't know what device I have. There are ways around this. You could click on the Apple logo, go about, and then it will tell you what laptop you have, but still that's something that a lot of people don't know how to do. Again, Apple, that was probably something that could have been very easily fixed. They could have done what they did on the MacBook Pros and they could have just engraved MacBook Air. That would have been something that would have made it feel more premium, but that's just something that Apple haven't done, and it's really unfortunate because it means that I've got to answer more questions now. Now let's talk about the fifth problem, or the fifth thing I hate about it, is that when you're video editing or playing a game, it tends to get quite hot and it begins to thermal throttle. What that means is it basically loses power because it's getting too hot. Now this will affect the battery life and the performance of the laptop, so it just becomes miserable to use. I've actually literally almost thrown it at the wall.
I hate this stupid thing. I'll put it in the bin.
And had to go and get my MacBook Pro because it is so aggravating to use when it comes to gaming or video editing. You just simply can't edit a video. Once you get 10 minutes into the video, it starts to freeze and overheat, and it's just like it's cooked and it can't do anymore. I find that quite frustrating because it works so good for 10 minutes and then it just dies off, and it's just really frustrating. Because then you've then got to go start again, and I just feel like it's something that could be improved on. Now overall, the new MacBook Air M2, it's fantastic. It's much better than the M1 MacBook Air, and you will feel the difference. It'll feel like a brand new device, trust me. There are obviously a few reasons why I wouldn't buy it, but I don't think that they're major reasons not to buy it. A lot of people aren't going to be video editing or doing intense gaming, so it's not a reason to not buy it. 100% I would buy it if I'm just scrolling through websites, watching YouTube, movies, photos, anything like that. It's going to be perfect for it. But just don't buy it if you're an advanced video editor or like to play games quite harshly, because it's not going to work for you. Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed. I hope you all have a better understanding of the new M2 MacBook Air, and I hope that you all want to go out and buy it after this, because it is definitely a fantastic laptop. Just avoid the midnight colour. It is by far the dirtiest colour you can buy. Speaking of colours, you can get this in Midnight Starlight, Silver and Space Grey. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, it's Everything Tech with Marco, and I will see you all in the next video.